There are a lot of exciting quarterback battles this offseason. And then there's the battle of the mid taking place in Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. One that was once a very good NFL quarterback, and the other who has long had high expectations, but never truly hit them. Now they're battling it out for the Steelers quarterback position, and it's still not entirely clear who the week 1 starter is going to be, but you can take a guess. The quarterback position has been a weak one for the Steelers. For a long time, it was Ben Roethlisberger, and there weren't any worries. And then that all changed when he retired. The Steelers tried to fix it like any team would and decided to use their first-round pick on a quarterback and even got a chance to take the first quarterback off the board, Kenny Pickett. Of course, now the only one starting still is Brock Purdy. The only other one that's even started regularly during a season is Sam Howell. It was a very weak class looking back, and Pickett perfectly encapsulates that. He was hard to watch. It was a chore having to watch Kenny Pickett play. He ended up starting 12 games in both of his seasons with the Steelers. He had 13 touchdowns in total over 24 games. Like I said, hard to watch. Long gone were the days of competent quarterback play from Big Ben, and something had to give. So the Steelers tried to fix everything this offseason. They traded Pickett to the Eagles in a deal with a few picks involved, and then they signed Russell Wilson to a 1-year vet minimum contract. That's just $1.2 million. Luckily, it helps that the Broncos are still paying him a ton of money to just not play for them. That wasn't it for the new Steelers quarterback room either. They ended up trading for Justin Fields from the Bears. That was also just kind of a pick swap deal. At least at this point, the Steelers found a way to have options. Kyle Allen is even there, who I think is a really good backup, especially just from his time in Washington. It feels like the Steelers are really just trying to find the guy. And who will it be? I really do think this is a solid quarterback battle between the two, and that's because I think Russell Wilson was actually really good last season. I know he got a lot of flack from that first year in Denver, and truth be told, it was really bad, but he got a lot better over the course of the season. Personally, I usually just root for Russell Wilson. He's a guy, he's from Richmond, Virginia, where I'm from, where I live, so I've always kind of had more of a knack to following his career, and last season he was a lot better. The Broncos still wanted to move on, and that's fair. He's still an aging quarterback, but Wilson was so much better last season, and I do still think that he might have some fight left in him. He's not that old just yet. Obviously, a mobile quarterback doesn't have the same kind of shelf life, but I like Russell Wilson as a player, and I would love to see him have this kind of retribution season and at least play okay for the Steelers before he hangs them up in however many years. As for Justin Fields, that's a guy you have on the roster because he has a really high ceiling. We're talking about a guy that was a first-round pick for a reason. Really not that long ago, that draft has just been super weak, but Justin Fields at his best has been a very good quarterback. He's had some incredible moments, some highlight moments when you look at it. The number one problem for him is he has never been consistent, and maybe by spending some time with a guy like Russell Wilson, a guy that is a mobile quarterback, a veteran, a guy that's won a Super Bowl, who has had some really good seasons, maybe that'll help him develop over time. And Justin Fields is still pretty young as well. Coming into training camp, the full expectation was that Russell Wilson was coming in as the projected starter, and that probably is still the case, but it's just a bit complicated. Russ hurt his calf during the team conditioning test. It sounded like it really wasn't too big of a deal, but the Steelers were really cautious about it, and that really did open the door for some more reps for Fields, and he got to play with the first team. As for the preseason, Russ didn't end up playing the Steelers' first game. Fields did, and he didn't do a ton. He went 5 of 6, 67 yards. It was honestly really Kyle Allen, who just played like the entire game, and then he didn't even play at all last game. It was just Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and the offense barely moved the football. They combined to play the entire game, and the Steelers scored 3 points. It was a hard watch. Russ was a bit sluggish. He did go 8 of 10. He had 47 yards. Then Fields was 11 of 17 for 92 yards, and we got to see our first big taste of his rushing ability in Pittsburgh. He had 8 carries for 42 yards. They're going back and forth in this competition, and it isn't very pretty, but most of the reports all offseason have been that it's Russ's job to lose, and that makes sense. When you look at this quarterback competition, it kind of comes down to 2 big questions. Who will be the starter and who should be the starter? As far as will goes, I feel like every single thing we've seen has pointed in the direction of Russell Wilson. He's the veteran, and even if they like Justin Fields, they might want to try to give him time and truly develop past what he actually did in Chicago. By every measure, it seems like unless Russell Wilson plays absolutely terrible or screws everything up somehow or gets hurt, it's probably going to be him starting week 1 and not Justin Fields. As for who I think should start, honestly, I don't think this is going to be a very good year for the Steelers. I don't think they're going to be a terrible football team. I do think Mike Tomlin is definitely in danger of his first losing season as a head coach, but that's just how the NFL goes. And unfortunately for them, the AFC North is just an absolute gauntlet. They're not going to be better than the Bengals, the Ravens, you know? There are some great teams in that division. I don't really believe in the Browns as much, but we'll see how it goes. This is a building year. I don't think they're going to be that good. And so I say, why not put out the guy with the high ceiling? You're actually technically paying him more, I think, too, since Russ is on a veteran minimum. So why not? I say you throw out Justin Fields. I think that's going to be better in the long run for this team. Russ, I think we know what Russ is at this point. He's a veteran. Justin Fields, let's see what happens. Now, whoever the starter is, there is one big question to ask. Are they actually in a spot where they can succeed? And that's a loaded question. One of the Steelers' top receivers is gone, Deontay Johnson. He was a Steeler for 4 years, and they sent him to the Panthers for Dante Jackson in a 4th rounder. George Pickens really was the #1 for the Steelers last season, and now he really is. I do think he's a good receiver, but I'm not sure about him as a 1. He could definitely prove that this season. He was great last season, and obviously his quarterback situation was pretty rough. So if he can even just get okay quarterback play, maybe he's great. But after him, it's just not a very good receiver room. They have Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, 2 guys who didn't do too much last season. Calvin Austin was on the Steelers, Van Jefferson, brand new. Roman Wilson is a really interesting rookie to keep an eye on, though. The Steelers just took him in the 3rd round out of Michigan. It would be great if he can turn into a good receiver and slide into that 2 or 3. Then there's running back. Najee Harris, he's still there, and somehow he's gonna rush for 1,000 yards again despite having the field vision of a partially blind grandparent. Of course, he's going to do that too, with the line not being very good again, I'd assume. The 2 names you really need to know there on the line are Isaac Seumalo, who was a stud for the Eagles for a long time and signed in Pittsburgh last year. And then there's Broderick Jones, a 1st rounder last year. That dude is just a behemoth of a dude, and the Steelers definitely want to see him continue to develop this season. The Steelers offense, I do think, is a pretty interesting unit. I get they traded away Deontay Johnson. I still don't quite understand trading away Deontay Johnson. I don't love these wide receiver weapons they have on this team. I think George Pickens does have, the potential to be a good NFL #1 wide receiver. I'm just not fully buying it yet. I think at the very best, he's going to end up being a really good #2, and that's just based off of what I've seen. But then again, I've only seen him play really with Kenny Pickett in the NFL, which is, hard for anybody to succeed. I can't stand watching Najee Harris play, and the offensive line I don't think is just that good. Overall, I just think it's not that great of an offense, but somehow, some way, they'll find a way to win football games because Mike Tomlin's there. The expectations for the Steelers this season are interesting. Somehow, Mike Tomlin is allergic to losing seasons. No matter what, he finds a way to have a winning record, even if it means being incredibly mid and still missing the playoffs. DraftKings has their current line set at 8.5 wins, so they're pretty much expecting them to be right in between that 500 spot. They are the very definition of mid, and so is the quarterback battle. Meanwhile, the AFC North is just an absolute gauntlet. The Ravens on paper have gotten worse from last season, but that's still a really good football team, fresh off of winning the division, and they have now 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson. Then there's the Bengals, who constantly have high expectations with Joe Burrow on the roster, and even the Browns you'd expect over the Steelers, even with Deshaun Watson just being an absolute train wreck. As it stands, the Steelers are expected to be the worst team in the AFC North, and that still puts them exactly there at 500 as a mid team. By every measure, this Steelers team is a mid football team. They are a mid 500 football team no matter how you look at it. The offense is mid. The defense is mid. Everything except really the head coach is mid. And to make matters worse, they're in one of the toughest divisions in football. Those two North divisions in football, I think, are the most exciting. And you look at the AFC North, and it's probably the toughest division in football. It's just that scrappy brand of football. The Browns have a really good defense. They do have some good offensive weapons, and I just don't see them even being able to play with the Ravens, who have gotten worse, and I still don't think it's going to matter. That's how good the Ravens are. The Bengals, they aren't too far removed from that Super Bowl there. As long as you have Joe Burrow, you're supposed to be good. If I had to put a number on it, I think the Steelers finish probably 7-10. I think they don't even finish quite 500. I think on paper, this is a 500 football team, but once you add in the fact that they play in the AFC North, you probably are going to stack up a little bit more losses. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the Steelers record is. Mike Tomlin should still be there next year, and I would imagine that Justin Fields is still there next year. Will Russell Wilson be there? I have no idea. And that's why I think it's probably best to just throw out Justin Fields, see what happens. You're not going to make the playoffs either way. Just go out there, see what you can do, and if you absolutely suck, take a quarterback next year. Try to reset this thing. This is a very important quarterback battle for the Steelers. And honestly, even if Russell Wilson wins, I'm expecting Justin Fields to start this season at some point.